Have you ever had that heart-stopping moment when your AWS bill is like 10 times what you expected it to be? Yeah, you are not alone. In this explainer, we're going to dive in and demystify those crazy surprise data costs. And more importantly, we'll show you how to build a data platform on AWS that's not just powerful, but also super cost-effective.
You know the feeling, right? You open up that monthly AWS invoice, you take a nice sip of your morning coffee, and then you almost spit it right back out all over your monitor. Where in the world did all these charges come from? It is such a common and honestly a painful moment for so many of us working in the cloud.
But here's the thing. That sticker shock, it's not really a sign that you failed. In a way, it's a sign of success. It means you're growing, you're using more data. But it's also a huge flashing sign that it's time to get a little smarter with your architecture. And the good news is, with just a few key changes, you can totally get those costs back under control.
All right, so to control your costs, you have to basically become a detective. We're going to go on a little hunt here for the hidden culprits inside your data platform that are secretly, silently draining your budget.
Okay, let's start at the very foundation, S3 storage. Now, it's so tempting to just dump everything into S3 standard because it's easy, right? But that's kind of like paying for a giant penthouse suite when all you really need is a small closet. The real key is to ask yourself one simple question. How fast do I need to get this data back? If the answer isn't like right now, then cheaper options like Glacier can literally save you a fortune. Now, let's talk about compute costs, specifically with Redshift. If you've got analytics jobs that are running pretty much 24/7, a provisioned cluster makes total sense. But if you have those spiky on and off workloads, Redshift serverless is a complete game changer. It could easily cut your costs in half. Think of it like this. It's the difference between owning a car versus just calling an Uber. You only pay for it when you actually use it.
And when we talk about EMR, oh man, this is where the real cost-saving magic can happen. On-demand instances are great. They're reliable, but they come at a premium price. Spot instances, on the other hand, can save you up to 90%. No, that is not a typo. 90%. Now, there's a catch. Your jobs have to be okay with a potential interruption. But if they are, this is hands down the most powerful cost-saving tool you have.
And now, we have to talk about the silent killer, Athena. See, it charges you for every terabyte of data that your query scans. If you're not careful, you could just be burning through your entire budget without even knowing what's happening. It's kind of like being charged for every single page of a book you flip through, instead of just the one page you actually wanted to read.
So, how do all these little cost drivers come together in the real world? Well, let's walk through a classic case study of an architecture that was, built with the best intentions, but ended up being incredibly expensive. Does this look familiar to anyone? I bet it does. The team was under pressure, they needed to move fast, so they just dumped all of their raw JSON data into one single massive S3 bucket. No folders, no compression, no rules whatsoever. So every single time they ran a query, it had to scan the entire enormous dataset just to find a handful of records.
And we've all been there, haven't we? You're on a deadline, you've got to deliver, so you take a few shortcuts. You tell yourself, I will fix it later, we'll optimize it later. But somehow, later has a way of never quite showing up, and that's when the bill arrives. It's a super common story, and honestly, there's no shame in it.
So, what was the final price tag for this naive design? A staggering $15,000 a month. I mean, think about that. That's enough money to hire another engineer or to fund a whole new project, and it was all just being wasted on inefficient data practices.
Okay, now for the good part. They didn't have to tear everything down and start from scratch. Nope, they just made 3 pretty simple architectural changes that had a massive, massive impact.
And here they are. These are basically the 3 pillars of data cost optimization on AWS. Partition your data, compress your files, and archive the old stuff. So let's break down what each of these really means. First up, partitioning. It's just like organizing your closet. Instead of just throwing all your clothes into one giant pile on the floor, you put your shirts in one drawer, your pants in another. In S3, this just means creating folders, usually by date. So when a query needs to find something from last Tuesday, it knows exactly where to look, which saves a ton of time and, more importantly, money. Next up, compression. But we're not just talking about zipping files here. This is much smarter. By switching to something called a columnar format, like Parquet, you're not just making the files smaller, you're actually making them smarter. It's like giving your data an index in the back of a book. Athena can just jump directly to the columns it needs without having to read the entire file.
And finally, lifecycle policies. This is where you get to put your savings on autopilot. You just set a simple rule that says something like, hey, if this data hasn't been touched in 90 days, go ahead and move it to the cheap cold storage. It's a simple, one-time setup that will just keep saving you money, month after month, for years.
So what was the result of these 3 simple changes? Well, that monthly bill plummeted from $15,000 all the way down to just $150. That is a 99% reduction in cost. It's not magic, it's just smart architecture.
Okay, so how can you apply these exact lessons and avoid that sticker shock in the first place? Here is a simple 5-point plan that you can start putting into practice today.
All right, first, tag absolutely everything. You need to know exactly who is spending what. Second, set up AWS budgets. Get an alert before you go over budget, not a month after. Third, make partitioning and compression a standard from day one, not a we'll fix it later problem. 4, put your archiving on autopilot with those lifecycle policies we talked about. And 5, make it a habit, a regular habit, to review your AWS Cost Explorer. Stay ahead of the bill. And you know, that really brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this. The crucial point is this: cost optimization isn't about being cheap, it's about being intentional. It's about architecting a platform that squeezes the absolute maximum value out of every single dollar you spend in the cloud.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Take a good hard look at your own data platform. Is it truly architected to deliver value, or is it really just generating a bill?